G'day to all. I'm happy to see you tonight. So it's 6:30 Paris time. As usual, as I'm set like a clock, like a Swiss clock, I'm here. So I will wait a bit until some others join, and then we can start, and I will start telling you about my week and giving you some updates, and then I will address today's theme, knowing that any questions will have priority over what I have prepared as the idea or the principle with those streams is that we are exchanging, interacting around your own prospects, your own concerns in relation to the dissertation, and so that's where I'm at for. That's where I'm at for now. Just needed to update one thing online. So I see you are already 4 of you. Hi Rachel. Hi 𝗵𝗀𝘀𝗀𝗏. I'm not sure who the others are, but I'll start very soon. So how has your week been? So I will then tell you more about mine. So this week was supposedly short, as we had. Hi Hamden, nice to see you. So thank you very much for joining. I'm really happy to see you here. And here is an occasion for sharing some updates as to what happened this week and what is bound to happen in the week to come. So hi 𝗬𝗏. The internet connection is weaker tonight, perhaps due to weather conditions. I hope. Well, we'll see. But thank you anyway. Thank you very much for making it tonight. So just an update on my AI in Education Odyssey. So last week I showed you where I'm at with my tools. I have not made any more progress on the tool itself so far, but it's not really a big deal actually. What I've done is that I have started connecting with people. Not started because I did start before already, but I continued connecting with people, with potential with deans or associate deans in French business schools, so as to let them know where I'm at and to have some insights from them as to whether they would be interested or not in my solutions, and and actually I'm not ambivalent, but what comes out is that there is an interest, for sure. There is an interest in this because the dissertation is a hot topic at the moment. This is the main concern confronting not just business schools but universities at large. And for reasons you already know, but here I'll give you some more, so you really see why and how come it is a hot topic. It is a hot topic because it makes everybody unhappy at the moment. Hi 𝗂𝗃𝗃𝗏. So it makes everybody unhappy. When I say everybody, it means it makes academic colleagues unhappy, it makes students unhappy, it makes program directors unhappy, and it makes also deans unhappy. So, and I will tell you why it makes people unhappy, of course, but as it makes everybody unhappy at the moment. There are discussions in some places relating to the relinquishing of the dissertation, just giving up. And I know that some schools in France have been tempted to do that, and some universities in other countries have already done that. I had a LinkedIn conversation with someone in Morocco who said that, they have solved the problem of the dissertation. They just quit it. For me, it's not solving the problem. They've just got rid of the problem. They've not addressed it, actually. And a number of schools are tempted to do that. But something very important to have in mind is that if schools eventually give up the dissertation, abandon this peculiar exercise, then they lose their identity. What distinguishes a university from a vocational training center is precisely that students are exposed to research, that students learn through research, and they also learn to do research. And if you quit the dissertation, then the risk is that you're just a training college, just a vocational training college, just a community college, which is not a problem in itself, but you're no longer a university. So let's say the prestige is no longer the same, the value of the degree is not exactly the same, as the degree does not grant access to the same jobs and perhaps to the same career prospects in some countries. And also, in most countries in the world, then with such a vocational degree or certificate, you cannot continue studying in the future, as your certificate is not a university degree. So there is no real path between what you've studied vocationally and what a university course could offer. And another problem, I would say, is that it's a longer term problem, is that relinquishing their dissertation would mean that students would never be exposed to research. And based on this, how can you make some students want to engage in research and then want to do a PhD or a DBA, or how do you make them want to then join academia if they have no exposing at all to research? My feeling is that relinquishing the dissertation would lead to undermining the base, the academic base for universities in the future. So there would be no more qualified staff in universities, and I think it would be a big problem unless we no longer want any universities. We just want vocational training institutions. But this is a certain worldview, and I doubt that most countries do have this worldview, especially as with the advent of AI, there has been a revived interest in research, in applied research, but also in mathematical, conceptual research, but also in linguistic research for large language models, those that are feeding generative AI. So there is a sort of a paradox or a contradiction at the moment. The dissertation is apparently a problem. Some consider quitting, but research has never been as needed as nowadays. So deciding to quit is probably the biggest error on the long term. So this is a dilemma. And based on this dilemma, how come everybody is unhappy with the dissertation? And I think some of you have gone through this, have had similar experience, and if you want to share your experience, I'm more than happy to read it. So first, students are unhappy. Students are unhappy because, I mean, there are many reasons, but one reason relates to supervision. Supervision is not strong enough. I would not say good, but not strong enough. This means you have too many students who are sort of orphans, who contact their supervisors when they need help, when they need advice, when they need feedback, and do not receive it in time. I've heard of students who write to their supervisor and have to wait for weeks, at times 1 to 3 months, until they receive a response. And in such circumstances, of course, students cannot be happy with the dissertation as a process, not the object itself, but this supervision is quasi-absent, quasi-nil. And when you're a student, you need help. So for those of you, and I recognized a few who've been my students, you know how important it is to me to respond in time. So always between 1 and 24 hours, let's say 36 hours. So students are not left on hold for too long. But what I've noticed is really that most of the time students are left alone. And this is especially true at times where they dramatically need feedback and need advice. When is this? This occurs mainly at 3 steps, at 3 stages, if not 4. The first time they need help and do not necessarily have it is with the devising of their topic and research question, where you need to interact with your supervisor. Perhaps once, perhaps more than once, but you need to clarify your ideas and to confront your ideas with someone else who has some experience, who's capable of identifying what you want to do, what is of interest to you, what is of interest to society, what is of interest to research, what is feasible, what is promising, so you're not reinventing the wheel. So you need this. And very often, supervisors are either absent or late at responding, or do not give sufficient advice. Too often, I've noticed that supervisors speak of what is of interest to them more than of what is of interest to their students. And for me, it is a problem. For me, this is something that makes students unhappy. And as you know, so you know me, I'm always trying to make sure I understand what students want to do. I'm always responding as quickly as I can and in an as detailed way as possible, so that students are not left on hold for too long. But I understood that not many people react like this. That's a problem. So the second step, the second stage, where students dramatically need help and do not necessarily have enough feedback, is with their research proposal. So whatever the name is, whatever your school is, it's a research proposal where you give an extended abstract of what you're intending to do, starting with your topic, research question. Generally, this is what I'm expecting with my own students. Generally, you already have a first draft of your literature review showing where you're at with your readings, with your reflection. Then what data you're intending to collect and process and how you're intending to do this, and what timeline you're intending to embrace and follow. And here, this is very critical because it is on the feasibility and the agenda of your research process. And too often, feedback is light, slight, or insufficient. So second stage where students are not too happy. But also, who else? So third stage is with the feedback you need in the middle of summer. In the middle of summer, supervisors, when I'm saying middle, it's even early summer, or summer, so let's say from mid-June until late August, it is difficult to have feedback from your supervisors because on one hand they are busy with marking, with panels, so this is for June, so late June, then in July they are going to conferences, so attending conferences, which are the core of their work, not the most important part of it, but the core and the peak, the climax of the year for the research year is in this period, so not very available. And then in August, they tend to be on holiday. And when on holiday, even if they work on their own research most of the time, they do not take any other duties. They do not really do anything else, which is understandable. When you're on holiday, you're on holiday. But when they're on holiday, they're writing. So this means when you dramatically need advice on what you think is the final version or in the finishing line of your thesis, this is dramatically lacking. And the fourth stage is with preparation of your Viva, your oral defense, when there is one. And now the trend is to bring Viva back after it was relinquished in the past, and I'll get back to this soon. So when you need to prepare for Viva, so of course you need to have feedback on your presentation. You perhaps even need to do a simulation, and for this you need feedback, you need someone. And your supervisors, as it is generally in September, not always, but if it is in September, it's the beginning of the academic year. They're busy with the new courses, with the new meetings and stuff. So not much time is devoted to this end of supervision. So students are unhappy. Next, and also, sorry, I forgot, there's another thing, which is that not all students are assessed exactly in the same way. So two dissertations that could be of similar level might have very different evaluations. You might have students with, let's take average dissertations, because if you take very good ones or very bad ones, generally there's no ambiguity, but with average, so not great but not terribly bad. With those situations, we have big dramas with students who, depending on who assesses them, might pass or fail. This is what is at stake actually. Do I get my degree or not? And it is as if, more or less as if you were at the casino and throwing dice or something, and leaving your life to randomness, and you can't. So students are not happy with this, and I can really understand that. Then, like I said, academic staff members are not happy either with the dissertation. My observation is, and was, when I was at 𝗂𝗶𝘀𝗀 École de Management, was that most of my colleagues would not supervise master's thesis. They would not. We were about 200 permanent staff members, out of which we were probably 150 qualified for supervising, and in total we were perhaps 60 eventually supervising students, which means that 90 of us would say no, not interested, not worth. They would argue that, but those dissertations are a farce. Students cannot really learn to do research in such a limited time, and they're too much preoccupied with finding an internship, with being committed to student unions. They do not really do the work, quality is low, and return on academic return on investment for me is limited. So I cannot derive any publications from that. So it's a sort of a waste of time, they argue. And I disagree. And I can give you two examples. Years ago, it was about 10 years ago, or perhaps more, but about 10-ish years ago, I had an MBA student who did a great dissertation, which was on the cost of accountability, and he was interested in museums. This dissertation was very good, so we derived a chapter for a book on accountability and performance management in NGOs. We had this chapter, which was derived from his dissertation. And it was like a flagship product for him. He then joined a university in Melbourne, in Australia, as a staff member, professional staff member, as we call them. And having published something helped. Even if it was not central to the job, at least it showed that, yes, he has an understanding of what happens in a university. And the second was a student who initially contacted me to interview me for her master's thesis, master's dissertation. And again, it was 8 years ago or something. And we spoke, and I really liked what she was doing, and I asked her about her supervision, and it appeared that she did not really have a real supervisor. So we asked permission, we asked her school permission for me to supervise her, which I did, and then we published in 2022 or 3, I can't remember, we published a paper in a journal which was derived from her thesis. And she's very proud of this, and she is now a senior auditor at Deloitte in Luxembourg, and having published something enhances her professional legitimacy, even if she does not have a PhD, which she does not need at the moment. But she has published something from the dissertation. But most colleagues would not consider this at all. They consider that only PhD students deserve supervising, so deserve their precious time, because only PhD students, according to them, would be able to publish work from their thesis. And I think this is absolutely wrong. But this is a different story. So, when you ask academic staff members to supervise students, they do it reluctantly. Most of them, not all. I love it. So I love doing it. So each year I spend perhaps nearly, not half, but nearly, 40% of my time doing supervisions, because I really loved it. And now that I'm no longer in higher education, I'm only taking supervisions, the dissertations from a variety of schools, because I love it. So, they do it reluctantly. And when someone does something reluctantly, it cannot be done well. So they are absent, not really responsive. Their advice is minimal. At times they might be a wee bit humiliating students, narrowingly or not. So this is a different discussion. So they're not happy. Program directors are not happy either, because they have to manage students' insatisfaction, student dissatisfaction. They also struggle to find supervisors, and it is big stress on them, because the health of their program relies on them and on their capability of finding solutions to any of those problems, be they academic or technical. And here we're at the intersection of technical and academic problems, finding supervisors when people do not want to do the job. And lastly, like I told you last week, a dean with whom I spoke told me, as I was speaking of my tools, I'm just counting the dissertation, just assessing the dissertation costs me just in sessional staff 200,000 a year, and if we consider permanent, so tenured staff, about $1 million a year. And he said, I'm here to reduce costs. So there is a problem with dissertations. And this week, so this is all this to say that everything I'm offering, the tools I'm developing and I'm bringing to the market are timely. They're timely. They're responding to a real need. But, and it's a big but, when I speak with a number of deans, most of them show a genuine interest. So that's perfect. So they show real interest. I'm supposed to do a couple of demos. One is due this week, and hopefully there will be more in December or January. That's great. But I also noticed that they're not mature enough, not mature yet for AI-related matters. I spoke with the dean, whom I've known for more than 20 years, so he could tell me things very candidly. And he told me, well, actually AI for us is a big deal. We do not know yet who should be in charge. And he said, and it's a very important matter, as we understand that AI is cross-sectional, cross-departmental. When you do something with AI, it involves the CIO, it involves teaching and learning, it also involves finance, HR, and depending on who is in charge, then the direction it takes will be different. And for now, we do not know what direction we want to take. This means that they have no idea of why they would go for AI. They have the feeling that they must go AI, but they have no idea why and how. And also, the same told me every day he's contacted by AI agencies offering him services, and said, that's ridiculous. So that's ridiculous. Every day an AI agency contacts me to sell me solutions. Sorry. So this means that there is an interest in what I can offer, but no maturity just yet, which is a bit of a concern at my end for now. And also, I spoke with another associate dean of a different school who told me, yes, your tool is fantastic, but it's true that it is too touchy at the moment, too sensitive for masters. But she said, but for bachelor's thesis, I'm sure that people will be happy. It will help everybody with bachelor's thesis. Are you okay to go for that? Oh yeah, sure, no problem. I can adapt the tool. It's no problem to bachelor's thesis. So, so this means I'm slightly not changing, but adapting a wee bit. And so those were two conversations I had. But then I had another conversation with another colleague. We've known each other for nearly 20 years, and something interesting is that after I quit Grenoble, I spent a few months in a rubbish school, which I would not recommend to anybody. And I then joined 𝗃𝗲𝗃 Business School as the Associate Director in charge of MSc programs. And when I took this job, I said no. I declined another job offer as Associate Dean for Research in a different school. And this colleague, who was already working in that other school, was interested in the role, and I briefed him on the role, on everything he needed to know. So he knew more than me as an insider, but for the role itself and the big challenges, I told him everything he needed to know, and he got the job. And he is thankful to me for having helped him at that time. So he's sort of not indebted, because it's not working this way, but thankful and willing to help. So he recommended me to a couple of other colleagues in different schools, and one of them just responded half an hour ago, just before we started today, saying that she's happy to catch up soon. So we will. And she loves this initiative in a different school. There's someone else who's working on similar issues, likes the initiative, and we'll talk tomorrow. And also this week I did a 2.5 hour session before master's students on AI and research. And here it was at the Rouen University. Where I was invited to give this guest lecture, and really enjoyed it. Now that I quit higher education, I'm more than happy to do some teaching occasionally on those things I like, where I think I've got something interesting or clever to say. And I realized that let's say there is a very small world of AI where people are quite savvy about it, but most people have a very superficial or insufficient understanding of what it is, and even of its basics. And this is something I really realized this week when I was both talking to deans and teaching students research. So I did a quiz, and so a quiz with students, like a Kahoot quiz, and there was, based on this quiz, I could talk about the issues associated with the research and with AI, and I realized that they did not know much at all about AI. So there is momentum, and so we'll then work on bachelor's thesis, which is not a problem. Plus, I will also contact smaller schools, which I did not want to do in the first place. Like those training centres that have vocational thesis or whatsoever. I didn't want to engage in this, not because I'm snob or whatsoever, but because the population is not big enough. I mean, there are many schools, there are many students in total, but each school has a limited number of students, so the effort would be very, very big. This weekend, so yesterday, I drew a list of registered schools, and there are nearly 1,500 just in France. So if I have to contact 1,500, meet with 1,500 deans, I think it will be impossible. And this for little each time. So if they have 100 students each, this would be something like a €1,500 contract, which is not very interesting, and especially if they have specific demands or whatsoever. So it might at some point be more costly going for small contracts than really saying no. But you never know. So this is where I'm at for now in relation to both research and AI. But also, I'm close to launching the business. So I think it should be by the end of 2025 or early 2026. And why haven't I launched the business yet? Because I would say not because I'm not ready. Well, partly because I'm not ready. So I did not have my tools ready to be showed, demonstrated, and also because because with my business partners we had not set everything just yet. In particular, we'll have a sort of a complex arrangement, and with transnational partners, and with this we need to be very clear with the statuses and with French and American laws, and see how we can combine both, etc. And this is something that will take time, so that we are meeting with solicitors soon, and we'll see also some others who are specialized in AI, so AI law, as I really need to protect myself, not just protect my idea, but also protect my liabilities in case there are protests for whatever reason. And this will take a bit of time. But as soon as the business is launched, of course, you will be the first ones knowing. So I'm sorry I've spoken very long about this. It's a long introduction, but I'm happy to share this enthusiasm and my odyssey into AI and research. And so for today, I wanted to address with you the organizing of time and work for the dissertation. For this, I want to address, let's say, three things. One is the typical structure of the dissertation. It will be something quick to do, but the dissertation. Then the main milestones and the retro planning, so how you can organize your year around this dissertation. And thirdly, interactions with your supervisor, assuming they exist. Matter of fact, I observe two viewers. Okay. Thank you for this message. So the first thing is the structure, the typical structure of a dissertation. I think it's important in mentioning it because too often students consider this a difficult part, and they're right considering a difficult part, because they do it as they would do for an essay, for a master essay, trying to find something original, articulate, and at times let's say more issue-based than research-driven. And there's been too much time trying to find the best possible structure, and all this at the expense of a simple structure, and the expense of spending time on what really matters. So 𝗵𝗶𝘀𝗀𝗵𝗀, it's no surprise for you what I'm going to say, but so the structure is simple. There is an introduction, which is a couple of pages, operating more or less like an extended abstract, an extended summary of the work, starting from the interest, so this triple interest the thesis, the dissertation has. So this interest for you, this interest for society or practitioners, and this interest for research. Then this dissertation, so this introduction, highlights the research question you want to answer, plus the way you will answer it, so by which means, in a few words, the theoretical framework employed, the or research hypothesis, if your approach is hypothetical deductive, plus your type of data, so the data you're collecting and processing, in a nutshell, the methods, and then the main findings and contributions, and of course dissertation structure. This is for the introduction. Then comes the literature review, and I will speak of the literature review in a subsequent stream, and perhaps in subsequent streams, plural form. And the literature review is something a wee bit bigger, about for a master's thesis about 4,000-5,000 words, where you are supposed to show what is known, what needs knowing on the subject, what is left as a blind spot in research, plus ideally what the main streams of thought are and how do they position themselves vis-a-vis each other, and where you wish to fit. Literature review. Then next chapter is data and methods. Here you clarify the data you've collected and processed, and how you have collected and processed your data. Next chapter, findings, and here you might have several findings chapters depending on the findings per se, but let's say I've got a findings part with one or more chapters, one or several chapters, where indeed you show what you have observed on with your empirical data. This is then followed with the methodology chapter will be about 3,000 words. The findings chapter can be about 10,000 words, and then you have the discussion chapter. Discussion chapter is the chapter where you confront your findings, your empirical findings, with the literature dressed in the literature review, so as to show to what extent you concur with it, diverge from it, can enrich it, and how you contribute to research. And lastly, a conclusion. And in this conclusion, you are not supposed to write another summary, another abstract of your work. The conclusion is the place where you show what should be retained from your study. So you remind the reader of your research question, their answer to this question, your contributions, and how your thesis, how your dissertation could be cited by others, and how further research could build on it to advance knowledge. So the conclusion can be very short, 2 pages, 3 pages maximum. If it is 1 page, it will not bother anybody. And of course, after this, you've got the bibliographies, a reference list. And lastly, if need be, appendixes. Those appendixes could be anything that is not in the body of the text, but that could help understand what you've done, or that could be additional evidence. Typically, as appendixes, students provide their interviews, transcriptions of their interviews. So we see that indeed those interviews actually took place, and we see what people actually said. There might be some material from the field which helped you, but which was not directly or explicitly cited in the body of the text. All this can be added at the end. So the structure is simple, and I'm starting with the structure because the year will be organized around this structure. And I'll start now with the milestones and the retro planning. So I'm starting from the end of the journey. Depending on your school, depending on your program, the dissertation could last from 6 to 12 months. So in some schools you have only 6 months to do it, in other schools it's 12, and it can be 9, but it's between 6 and 12. So I'm telling you the schedule. I'm starting from the end of the journey when you submit. And let's say there is even forgot, there is oral defense. So there's oral defense as the very last milestone, the big day for you. So oral defense. Interestingly, most schools that in the past had abandoned oral defenses are now introducing them again or back. And do you know why? Because of AI. Because many students use or misuse AI to write their dissertations in full or in part, and the oral defense is now a moment of truth where the panel can assess the level of understanding and of command the student has of their topic and of the content of their dissertations. This is where we're at. So oral defense is at the very end of the journey. Before that, there's the submission date. You submit your dissertation. Well, depending on the programs, it can be in September, it can be in November, it can be in April, May. Depending on the program, depending on when you start in the year. But let's take the September as a guide. Otherwise, we will all be all over the place if I consider 3 different dates. But September. So submission date is sometime in September. Let's say early September. Between early September and oral defense, which is sometime in October, it can be sometime in November, but generally more October. Then during this stage, between the two, the supervisor is assessing the work and deciding whether this dissertation can be submitted, can be defended or not. The supervisor is here to give a green light or a no-go. Why is it important? It is important because the supervisor is here to make sure that if you go for Viva, for the oral defense, you will succeed. If the thesis, if the dissertation is not ready, is not good enough, is not up to the standards, there is a risk that the panel fires you. And there's nothing worse than being failed on the defense day. And I can tell I failed students. It happened 3 times in my life where I failed students on the Viva day. So I know it's very hard. For those of you who know me or who have known me for years, you should know that I'm not a tough person. So if I fail someone, it's because the work is not good at all. And in this case, I failed students whose supervisor was really absent, actually. But so, the supervisor and or a committee, a panel, assesses the thesis and decides whether it can be defended. And during this period, there's nothing you can do. So you just have to wait. You can when you're speaking of doctoral thesis, you can start preparing for Viva, preparing your argument, preparing your slideshow, hoping that the panel, that reviewers will not require too big changes, too much of a change. And I spoke of this some time ago, and I will speak about it again in the future. So for that time, there's not much you can do. So my recommendation is always that you should try to rest and do something else. Now, before early September, before you submit, there's a period which students tend to underestimate, and which is very important. There is a period you need for editing the thesis. For a master's thesis, I recommend 2 weeks. When I was doing my PhD, my supervisor told me I will need 3 months to do the editing of the thesis, and he also said students always underestimate editing. And I thought 3 months, that's too much. I will never need 3 months to do the editing of the thesis. I thought even 1 month would be too much. Maybe 2 weeks. I did it in 2 weeks, and then the panel highlighted many typos, many howlers and stuff. So I then realized, oh yes, he's wrong. He's right, sorry, I was wrong. And students tend to underestimate this. And editing is not just a matter of fixing language, proofreading. It is really a matter of making sure that everything holds together, that there are no inconsistencies from one chapter to another, from one section to another, that everything holds together. And here is a story. I had a student who did a great thesis, DBI thesis, on the construction of a fan market, and his thesis was edited by Rachel, and Rachel found that there were 3 recurrent concepts, which were in terms of when he was speaking of interactions between a professional football club and their fans on social media, that there were 3 concepts that were persistency, frequency, and consistency. But she noticed that those 3 concepts were not always presented in the same order. And she said, well, if they're not always presented in the same order, it sounds weird. And as one of those is consistency, it looks bad. So, so then in the editing, the 3 concepts were placed in the right order, all the way in the thesis, everywhere in the thesis, which means that perhaps at some point there was a chapter that was addressing consistency before persistency, but in fact, theoretically, or in the other chapters, the order was different, so he had to rearrange things so they are all consistent together. So this is what editing is about. But also, when you do the editing, you might at some point rewrite the introduction, partly rewrite the literature review, adjust your methodology chapter, because what you have actually done, what your findings are, differ slightly from what you were considering during at the beginning. So all this is part of editing. And when you do a master's thesis, I think 2 weeks is necessary. So this means that mid-August, at the latest, you must work on editing before you submit. This means that you must have had approval from your supervisor by then. And I know that this is part of the impossible equation, as I mentioned at the very beginning today, that students are generally left on their own in the middle of summer because their supervisors are on holiday. So at this very critical time, they need feedback, they need approval from the supervisors, which often does not happen. But if it happens, do not wait until after mid-August for editing the thesis or the dissertation. Then, or prior to that, so indeed you need to have a final version which you send to your supervisor, even if you do not receive feedback. But like I said, so assume that you start editing around mid-August because you have received feedback in time, at the latest around mid-August, which means that if you want things to be done reasonably, so within a reasonable time frame, give your supervisor at least 2 weeks to go through your dissertation. So this means you should be able to send the quasi-final version by the end of July for a submission in September, early September. The thesis should be sent to your supervisor no later than late July. Which means that you might have had done a couple of rounds of readings and rewrites prior, and now let's after this let's start. So let's continue with the chapters going recursively. So discussion and conclusion, then results, then data collection, then methodology, then literature review, then topic and research question. So, discussion and conclusion. It is a chapter which is not necessarily long per se, so it does not require too much time, but it needs to be done seriously. So I recommend about 2 weeks to write a proper discussion and proper conclusion. The chapter is not very long, so it's like I said, about 2,000 to 3,000 words for a master's thesis. So this means a couple of pages where you show the theoretical contributions by confronting your findings with the literature review. You show also the contribution or the interest for society in a way or another. So this is a place where you already have the material. You do not have to read anything new. You do not have to collect new data or process new data. You just have to sell your work and what makes it unique, what makes it especially good and worth. This is where you're at. So about 2 weeks should be enough, which means about mid-July for discussion and conclusions. So from you start around mid-July. About mid-July, you should have this done, so you can reread the whole thing, rewrite, and send it to your supervisor by late July. So mid-July, so from the beginning to mid-July, you write them. Then you have to work on the results, so the empirical findings from your thesis, from your empirical work, and here it is about it can be a bit long. It can be a bit long. Of my own experience, it takes students between 1 and 3 months. When you do a quantitative study with a survey, a questionnaire, what takes time is data collection, and processing the data is probably not too long. You know based on your data what test you need to run, and you have to run those tests, and you have to write the tests and the results. And when you do a quantitative study, the results chapter is generally briefer than for a qualitative study. And I'll get back to this soon. So you then so you write the results. If you do, like I said, quantitative, consider you need about a month, so all of June, to write this chapter. If you do qualitative, consider you might need up to 3 months, which means if it is up to 3 months, it means that you might need to start June, April, that you might need to start early April, late March, early April, doing your coding, and I'll get back to this in a subsequent stream, during your coding or structuring your thinking and your draft, etc. And knowing that you will constantly go back and forth between your data and the literature, so as to make sure and what you've written before, so as to make sure that you remain consistent with yourself, that you remain in tune, if I can say so. And then prior to that, you've got data collection per se. And data collection is something which is quite hard and stressful, because this is the part of the thesis, the part of the journey, so, where you have the least control of how things go. It is out of your control. When you do qualitative and mainly interviews, you are not in control of people's schedule, of informant's schedule, of informant's availability. So, as I said, that it might take less time collecting qualitative data, which is sort of true, but you should consider between 1 and 3 months to organize your interviews. And here, if we consider that you start writing your results early June, or it means that you have May, April, March, so that's early March, you start scheduling interviews with people. But ideally, really, you should have your interviews done in March or May, because March or April, sorry, because May is a month, at least in France and many European countries, a month with many public holidays where people are often unavailable. So schedule your interviews March and April. March is the best month, actually. There is no public holiday, there is no summer break, semester break, or whatsoever. So people are bound to be available. With a survey, with a questionnaire, it is a bit trickier as well, as you do not have the guarantee, or you do not know when you have a sufficient number of responses. When you do a quantitative study, you must have at least 100 exploitable responses. You cannot reasonably do stats and probabilities with less than 100 observations. What do percentages mean when you deal with less than 100 observations? Not much. So here it is then all about finding the right medium to administer your questionnaire. Generally social media. Your student social media, which could be Reddit, which could be LinkedIn, although I see fewer and fewer students on LinkedIn. Facebook is outdated for students. I'm not sure that Instagram or TikTok are the best places for interviews, for surveys, but at least Reddit is a good one, a good platform. So just find the right platform, sending your survey to some people who could diffuse it in their own circles and networks, is something that will take a bit of time. And you will have to then reactivate people, send them gentle reminders until you have reached the number of responses you need. And this might take between 1 and 3 months. So again, as with qualitative but for different reasons, you should start no later than early March. This means we are halfway through. And now, halfway through the whole journey, you must start with data collection, as you supposedly started in September, and supposedly submit in September the following year. So you're in March, year 2. Before you collect your data, you must clarify, and I'm always asking my students to write the methodology chapter. I want them to write it before they start collecting data, because they know where to go. They have set their protocol, their data collection and treatment protocol. I have one student this year, one student who, for some reason, I've never understood why, who decided to start data collection at a very early stage with a survey, which for me is not working too well just now, especially as she has not engaged very much with the literature, not enough. And I've highlighted it a number of times, but still, so I think she's stressed that not collecting data means not doing the dissertation. I think there's something like this. And she's not written the methodology, so I have no idea why she has designed this particular survey. I have no idea what the sample population is supposed to be, what the inclusion criteria are to partake in the survey. And this is, of course, this is a problem when this type of critical data is missing. So she is dealing with a very hot topic, which is on how does she call them? Fully controlled or fully managed e-commerce platforms, and such as Shein and Temu, and how consumers perceive those platforms. But so she has designed a questionnaire, but she does not have a clear working research question. She has not gone through the literature well enough just yet. So the questionnaire is probably not working, honestly. And I'm still not clear with the population she wants to, from which she wants to have insights. So I always require that students take time. It can be about 2 weeks to really write this methodology chapter. And what should fall within this methodology chapter, everything making your overall protocol 100% transparent. That is, whatever you do, quals or quants, you should clarify every single question you're asking, the purpose of this question. The purpose means how it contributes to answering your research question, plus the theoretical groundings of your questions. How do they proceed from the literature? Either, and this can be either because you take inspiration from prior studies. Oh, such and such have studied this question, so it's an important one, so I will ask it. Or you might find inspiration from a different discipline and you adapt the question, saying, oh, someone dealing with a different topic has asked this type of question, but it can work in my situation, I will adapt it slightly. Or you can also identify questions that have been left unanswered or not asked before, and you think it's a blind spot deserving investigation at your end. And in this case, you clarify it. But at least we need to know. And you should spend as much time and use as much room as necessary to make your point comprehensive and clear. Because your point here is comprehensive and clear, it is convincing. The biggest problem with most theses that are not good enough is that the methodology is not clear. That the methodology chapter is not comprehensive enough, often underthought, underdeveloped, so that we do not really know as readers what has been done, how and why. So at the end of the day, the dissertation and the methodology chapter in particular raises more questions than it brings answers. And this is a big problem. In a very good dissertation, when you read something, when a question arises, it gets an answer in the subsequent sentences. So you are fulfilled and you finish your reading having found answers to every single question you could have asked. And too often, like I said, it's underestimated and not well enough done, not well enough developed. And here, 2 weeks for this should be okay, should not be too long, especially as you usually know what you're doing and why. You need to put it in writing to formalize it. And once it's put in writing, when it's formalized, then things are even clearer for you and you're really ready to collect your data. This means that you should have started with your methodology chapter around mid-March, no later. It could be early March, but around mid-March, so you can start. Mid-February. I was meaning early or mid-February, so that you can start collecting data in March. And then this means that you've got then a fair amount of time for the literature review. The literature review is something which is for students probably the most difficult to do, the most difficult thing to do. Therefore, I devoted 2 streams. I have already devoted 2 streams to readings last week and the week before, and there will be another one, perhaps another couple of ones in the weeks to come, more specifically on the literature review. But it's difficult but necessary. And where students struggle is with everything I discussed in the previous weeks, which is with identifying readings, finding the right readings, so collecting readings, doing the reading, analyzing or interpreting the reading, and then structuring what they found in the readings and then writing it. The literature review, like I said, in a master's thesis is about 4,000 or 5,000 words. And here what takes time is 2 things. One is reading per se, and the other one is writing. And of my own experience, when students do it well, it usually takes them about 2 months 2 months doing the two, but it can be up to 3. So from 2 to 3 months doing both. Usually they really start reading in November, sometime in November. I consider December is a month where nothing happens, as they have exams, plus you've got end of year celebrations, so Christmas, New Year for Christians, but other celebrations for other confessions. And so this means more or less November, January, and early February. So here, what is difficult indeed is everything we did last week and the week before, plus the writing. What is especially difficult for students with writing is the structured or the recent literature review, where the temptation is always there to list your readings as a procession of such and such said, or at best a procession of theories, where it's not an author separately, but a group of authors belonging to a certain stream of thought, but all this presented in a very descriptive manner, not always linked or directly linked to the topic or the research question, and at the end of the day, not really enabling the reader to understand what is known, what needs knowing, where researchers agree, where researchers disagree, where there is a debate, and where the student at the end of the day wants to fit. And yet, this is what is expected of students. And they struggle very much with this. So, of my own experience, there are at least 2 versions of the literature review. My students generally submit sometime in January, around the 20th of January, again, based on my own experience, a first draft of the literature review, and then they take about another month until the 20th or mid-February to write the new version, which is more recent and more critical. But generally when they get started, they underestimate this. And they get started, they think straight of their empirical data and tend to neglect their importance and the length and the time it takes to write the literature review, to read for the literature review, and to write it. And here it was November. Then back to the very beginning of the journey, and there are 2 things. One is topic and research question, and the other one is finding a supervisor, a tutor. I spoke of finding a supervisor some time ago, and I will probably do another stream on it soon, addressing different things, of course. But when you look for a supervisor, you need to be clear with what you want to do. You need to be clear with what you want to do, with who could supervise you. This means that you must first be very clear with your topic, your research question, so you know what to sell to a potential supervisor. And the second thing is that you need to also browse the list of potential supervisors, and you need to be as clear as possible with their areas of interest, with their availability, with their promptitude when they respond, to questions and also the quality of the feedback they're used to giving to students. And all this takes time, and especially when you know that contacting a supervisor does not mean you will have a quick response. So 2 or 3 weeks, if not a month, which means that when you start in September, you will need probably a fair part of October to find someone, until you find someone. So you will need probably nearly all of October, well, about a month, nearly all of October before you start with the literature review, to find a supervisor. And you can start looking for a supervisor early October once you are clear with what you want to do. So with your topic and with your research question, which should start at the very beginning of the journey, which should be as early as September when you enroll in the program. Of course, when I'm saying this, it is in an ideal world. In reality, I know that it's not like this. I know that in reality, you do not have that much time for this. I know also that in many situations, you start with the program in September, but the dissertation is really a concern only from November. In most instances, it is the case, which means that you have limited time. You have November to do nearly everything you were supposed to do in September and October as well. So there is a big rush in November where most students have to find their topic and research question, find a supervisor, start browsing the literature, so they have something in January, so around the 20th of January, they can submit to the supervisor. I know it's hard, but this is the sad reality of things, where things are rushed in November. But in an ideal world, so the schedule is the one I've just described. And lastly, I said I want to discuss briefly interactions with the supervisor. And in a previous session, I mentioned the 3 types of supervisors, 3 types of supervision, which were if you remember, the distant one, who considers that a good student is able to supervise themselves and does not need much support. So the distant supervisor is a supervisor who will respond when they think it is necessary, not necessarily promptly, but they will at times. And at times means that at least they will agree with you on the research, on the topic and the research question. They will agree with you on the direction you want to take. They will give you some feedback on, perhaps not on the literature review per se, but more on your constructs subsequent to the literature review and just before you start with data collection. And they will also give you some feedback on the findings and before you're engaged with the discussion. And not all of them, even the distant ones, give real feedback on the final product when you submit. You've got the directive one, and the directive one is bound to give you relatively strict and rigid deadlines and give you feedback, so ask you where you're at on occasion, so periodically, and will give you feedback relatively soon after you sent whatsoever. And here the the number of interactions will depend on the extent of their direction, how directive they are, and what they're exactly expecting of you. If they see that you're doing exactly as they're expecting, they will probably be less demanding, less controlling than if you are at odds with what they are expecting of you. But for them, they will guide the interactions. And the third type is the available one. For the available one, here you need to be clear with when you need help, when you need advice. And here, when you need advice is indeed at the very beginning for the topic and the research question, where you need to agree on what you want to do, but also on how feasible and how promising it is. Once you've done this, I think it's important also engaging with your supervisor when you at the beginning and halfway through the literature review, so as to check with him or her that you're on the right tracks, and if yes, then you can continue like this. If not, at least you will have feedback helping you make progress, and of course you've seen the final version of the literature review. After this, you will need feedback from your supervisor if he or she is available on the methodology. So you will have to agree on the methodology altogether, and then your supervisor can help you diffuse your survey if you do a survey, or can help you find informants for interviews if you do interviews. And you will probably not need much feedback while collecting data. You will probably not need much feedback while processing data, but once you have written the whole thing, you will need to have feedback before you engage in the discussion, so as to see how clear things are, how convincing things are. Do you provide sufficient empirical evidence or not? So this is the type of thing you really need. And of course, the available supervisor will give you feedback on the final product, so you have everything in hand to do the editing in the summer, like I said, so around mid-August. So what I wanted to show here is that that you need to plan the year from the beginning to the end, but starting from the end, so you know where to fit, and you can set your own deadlines. And something very important I've not mentioned yet, I'm saying it now and I will repeat it in subsequent streams, is that by no means you should wait until summer for writing up the dissertation. I'm saying this because I have seen in the past 20 years too many students thinking that they could devote their summer to writing up their dissertation. This means that there were no deadlines in the course of the year, that there was no continuity of their work, that they did not really engage with their supervisor, and that the risk was high that the dissertation is not good. And I was lately confronted with such a situation. 2 days ago, I received a dissertation from a student saying, and I totally forgot I was supervising him. He said to me, I did not know that I should liaise with my supervisor, you, and that I should send you my dissertation prior to submitting. Here is the dissertation. He had obviously written it in one go, perhaps in a month or something. And I might commence saying, well, I'm not sure if it's really worth me making commence now, as you have to submit within 2 days. But if you really want comments, here they are. And the comments were, in a nutshell, that the dissertation is not up to the standards. It was done enhanced and it showed. So important is that you start writing as soon as you can and that you keep up with your pace and write a bit every day. And I had a prof, and I will finish with this, who about 25 years ago told me something I will always remember. Research is the opposite of construction, of building. With construction, it's easier undoing and starting from scratch. With research, it is the opposite. It's much easier building on something which already exists. You can write much more easily when you have already written something. So if you start writing early, writing more, writing up, editing will be much easier. So this is the final take for tonight. And again, thank you very much for making it tonight, for connecting, for joining. I hope it's useful, and I hope to see you next week. So I will, as usual, share with you the theme for the week, and should you know anybody who could be concerned, who could be interested in those streams, in those sessions, please spread the word. I'm more than happy to have more people from different backgrounds coming with their questions, with their concerns, and trying to help them rather than being just on the lecture mode. So again, thank you very much. I wish you a lovely evening and a great week, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next Sunday. Bye to all.